It was the last message sent from Earth before the invasion began. No desperate plea, no surrender, just a single warning. You'll regret this war. The words echoed across the bridge of the Zorth command vessel, the alien officers exchanging wary glances. They had seen countless species fall before their empire, each one reduced to dust in memory. But something in the human's voice made the air feel heavier, the silence after the transmission stretching uncomfortably long. Fleet Commander Valric scoffed, his mandibles clicking in amusement. Regret? What could these frail creatures possibly do? Their homeworld was already surrounded, their defenses insignificant. The Zorth Empire had crushed civilizations with technology beyond human comprehension. This war, if it could even be called that, was already over. Yet, deep within the cold steel corridors of the human command bunker buried beneath the remains of New York, a different reality was unfolding. Humanity had never won wars with sheer power. They won with resilience, with ingenuity, with an unrelenting will to survive. General Cole stood before the last remaining officers, the dim lights flickering above them as the ground trembled from orbital bombardments. He wasn't afraid. He had read the reports, studied the enemy's movements. The Zorth thought Earth was theirs already. But they didn't understand humans. Not yet. Let them land, he said, voice steady. Let them think they've won. Across the planet, scattered resistance cells received the same order. The cities were lost, but humanity wasn't bound to its skyscrapers or streets. It lived in the shadows, in the ruins, in the hearts of those who refused to kneel. The Zorth had never fought an enemy like this before. In orbit, the invasion began. Warships descended, their hulls glowing red as they tore through the atmosphere. Legions of alien soldiers deployed, confident in their victory. Cities lay in ruins. Governments had fallen. Earth, as they knew it, was gone. And yet, something was wrong. Hours passed. Days. The resistance did not fight in open battle. There were no grand defenses to break, no armies to crush. Instead, Zorth patrols vanished. Supply lines collapsed. Their own technology turned against them, corrupted by human ingenuity. What should have been a swift and glorious conquest became something else entirely, a ghost war. The reports came in too late. The enemy was everywhere and nowhere. The Zorth were the invaders, but somehow, impossibly, they had become the hunted. Then, on the seventh day, a new transmission crackled through their ships, hijacking every screen, every frequency. It was the same voice as before. Calm. Cold. You should have listened. A silence fell over the fleet. And then, one by one, Zorth warships began losing power. Systems shut down. Weapons deactivated. One after another, they were swallowed by the darkness of space, drifting helplessly toward the burning planet below. And that was when they realized Earth had never been conquered. It had simply been waiting. The Zorth ships drifted like dead stars, their once mighty fleet now little more than lifeless metal caught in Earth's gravity. Inside their command vessel, Fleet Commander Valric stood frozen, his mandibles clicking in disbelief. This wasn't how wars were fought. His kind had crushed empires, reduced civilizations to cinders. The idea that a primitive species, one that was supposed to be defeated, had somehow turned the tide without even engaging in a real battle was unthinkable. He barked orders at his officers, demanding status reports. But the answers only made the silence on the bridge heavier. Systems unresponsive. Weapons offline. Communications severed. Even the emergency thrusters had failed. It was as if someone had reached into their very core and shut them down from within. Valric turned toward his chief technician, a veteran of countless conquests. The officer's skin had paled to a sickly gray, his tendrils trembling. "It's not mechanical," the technician rasped. "It's deeper. Our own systems are rejecting us." Valric's jaw clenched. "Impossible." The Zorth had the most advanced technology in the known galaxy. No species, especially not a primitive one, could possibly... His thoughts were interrupted by the lights flickering. Then, one by one, the displays across the bridge filled with static. The ship's main console, completely cut off from human systems, suddenly came to life. A single symbol appeared on the screen. A human symbol. A skull? Valric felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. Deep beneath the remains of Earth's cities, in tunnels older than any living human, General Cole stood in the command center, watching the data stream flood in. His people had done their part. Their scientists, their engineers, their hackers, all of them had worked in silence, in the shadows, knowing this day would come. Humanity had never planned to win with brute force. That was never how they fought. Cole pressed a button on the console, opening a direct line to the resistance cells scattered across the globe. "They're in free fall," he said, his voice steady. "Do not engage." "Not yet." In the ruins above, resistance fighters crouched in the darkness, their weapons ready. They could see the alien patrols moving in erratic, confused patterns, their formations breaking apart. The invaders had lost their greatest advantage: control. Now, they were stranded on an unfamiliar world, surrounded by a species that had spent its entire existence adapting to hardship, to war, to survival. And the humans weren't done yet. Cole turned to the woman standing beside him, one of the minds behind the virus that had crippled the Zorith fleet. She didn't look like a warrior, thin, quiet, eyes constantly scanning the screens. But she was more dangerous than any soldier. She had spent years studying the enemy, finding the flaws in their technology, their tactics, their psychology. "They still don't understand," she murmured. Cole nodded. "But they will." Far above them, the first Zorith warship, caught in Earth's gravity, began to descend. Not in a controlled landing. In free fall. Straight toward their own troops. The first warship hit the ground with a sound that shook the planet. A deafening roar, metal shrieking against stone, a shockwave rolling through the ruins like a thunderclap. The Zorith forces on the surface barely had time to react before the debris rained down, crushing vehicles, tearing through ranks of soldiers that had once marched with perfect coordination. Now they were running. Fleet Commander Valric watched the feed in stunned silence. His ship, along with the rest of the fleet, was powerless, drifting helplessly as Earth's gravity decided their fate. He had seen planetary invasions before. He had led them. But this wasn't war. This was something else. A trap. He turned sharply to his chief technician. How did they do this? His voice was tight, desperate to hold on to control. Find the source of the virus. Get our systems back online. The technician's hands trembled over the dead console. It's not just a virus, Commander. It's rewriting everything. It's like he's swallowed, struggling to find the words. Like the ships are rejecting us, as if we don't belong in them anymore. Valric's blood ran cold. This wasn't just an attack on their technology. It was an attack on their very ability to wage war. On the surface, the chaos was growing. The Zorith troops had expected resistance, fierce but fleeting, like the battles they had fought on other worlds. They had never faced an enemy that refused to fight them head-on, that melted into the ruins only to strike when they were most vulnerable. Their supply lines were gone. Their commanders were cut off. Their own ships, the very weapons they relied on, were now falling from the sky like dying stars. And somewhere in the darkness, humanity was watching. In an underground chamber, miles beneath the wreckage of a once great city, General Cole studied the battlefield through live feeds. Resistance fighters whispered through the comms, passing along sightings, movements, the shifting panic in the enemy's ranks. Every moment of hesitation, every poorly executed retreat, it was all being tracked. "They're breaking," one of the officers muttered, watching a group of Zorith soldiers abandon their weapons and flee into the ruins. Cole didn't look away from the screen. Not enough. The woman beside him, Lena, the mind behind the virus, glanced at him. "They still don't understand what's happening to them," she said quietly. "They're still thinking like conquerors." Cole exhaled slowly. They won't for much longer. Above them, another warship shuddered as it lost altitude, spinning helplessly as it spiraled toward the ground. The Zorith onboard screamed as gravity took hold, their armor clattering against the walls, their weapons useless. They were no longer invaders. They were prey. On the surface, in the cold night air, a lone Zorith officer staggered through the ruins. His breathing was ragged, his rifle held too tightly in shaking hands. His entire squad had been wiped out. Not in battle. Not by direct combat. They had simply disappeared, one by one. Then, in the darkness ahead, he saw movement. A shadow shifting against the rubble. A whisper of fabric. A glint of something metallic. His mandibles clicked in terror as he realized he wasn't alone. The Zorith officer's breath came in sharp, panicked gasps. His armor felt heavier than ever, the weight of it pressing down on him as if the very planet itself was rejecting his presence. The ruins around him were silent, but he knew he wasn't alone. Something was watching him, hunting him. His grip tightened on his rifle. His mandibles twitched, trying to listen for movement, but the only sound was the distant, unnatural groan of another warship breaking apart in freefall. The ground trembled, dust swirling in the moonlight. He turned sharply, weapon raised, but there was nothing. Just rubble and shadows. Then, a whisper. It came from behind him, so close it sent a shiver down his spine. He spun around, firing wildly, the bright plasma bolts tearing through the dark. But they hit nothing. No enemy. No movement. Just empty air. And then his rifle failed. A sharp digital screech rang through his helmet as the weapon locked up. Its power core flickered, then died, as if something had reached inside it and ripped control away. He tried to reactivate it, his clawed fingers scrambling over the controls, but it was useless. Dead. Just like the ships. Just like the fleet. A presence shifted in the shadows ahead. Slow. Purposeful. The officer backed away, his mind racing. He was trained. He was elite. But none of that mattered now. None of his training had prepared him for this. Then, a voice. Not Zorith. Human. You should have left. The officer's body went rigid, every instinct screaming at him to run. He turned too slow. A figure moved in the darkness, emerging just enough for him to see the glint of something in their hand. Something sharp. He tried to lift his rifle again, a useless reflex, but the weapon slipped from his grasp. His limbs felt heavy. Weak. His vision blurred. His body was failing him. Not from injury. Not from exhaustion. Something was inside him. Inside his armor. Inside his systems. Just like the ships. Just like everything else. Above the city, Fleet Commander Valric watched in horror as another warship lost control, its hull breaking apart in the atmosphere. His fleet, his people were falling one by one, and he had no way to stop it. A transmission cut through the static. A human signal. A voice, calm and controlled, came through the bridge speakers. You should have listened. Valric's blood ran cold. Then, every console on his ship went black, and for the first time in his long career, Fleet Commander Valric knew what it felt like to be powerless. Valric's breath was shallow as the bridge lights flickered, then died completely. The ship around him groaned, metal twisting under forces it was never designed to withstand. His claws dug into the armrests of his command chair. The void outside his viewport was no longer a battlefield. It was a graveyard. The fleet was gone. Not destroyed by fire, not torn apart by superior weapons. No, that would have made sense. That he could have understood. But this? This was something else. Something worse. A quiet death. The human transmission still played in his ears, a voice so calm it chilled him more than any battle he had ever fought. They had known. From the moment this war began, the humans had known exactly how it would end. And now, so did he. On the surface, the last remaining Zorith forces had already begun to surrender. It was not by choice. Their weapons no longer functioned. Their armor betrayed them. Their own systems locked them out as if the very machines they had built had turned against them. Some resisted, running into the ruins, desperate to hold on to their training, their pride. But there was no escape. Humanity did not meet them in open battle. Humanity did not fight as they had expected. Humanity simply watched them fall. In the underground chamber, General Cole exhaled, his fingers tapping lightly on the console before him. The war was over. Not in the way history usually recorded wars, with grand battles and bloody final stands. No, this one had ended the moment the first Zorith ship shut down. Lena turned to him. "They're transmitting surrender signals." Cole didn't react immediately. He simply watched the screen, observing the once mighty invaders now reduced to scattered, powerless remnants. "They never stood a chance," she added. He finally looked at her, his expression unreadable. "No," he said. "They didn't." Above them, Valric's ship continued to drift, powerless, caught in the planet's gravity. His crew was silent. There were no orders left to give, no strategy left to try. The war was lost. And yet, as the planet loomed closer, he found himself speaking, even though there was no one left to listen. "We should have never come here." In the final moments before his ship entered the atmosphere, before the fire consumed the wreckage of what was once a proud fleet, the last thing he saw was the Earth itself, dark and scarred, but unbroken. And then nothing. Humanity watched as the last of the enemy fleet fell from the sky. Some cheered. Others simply stood in silence, knowing what had just happened would be spoken of for generations. The war was over. The invaders had learned a lesson they would never forget, and Earth remained.